Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 207. Unidentified Wall. Part 4. Kim Dokja thought, I don't know if people are doing well. I wondered if I could see the story of Earth again on the screen, but there was nothing to be seen. It wasn't easy for the Weni people to easily steal the videos of the Dakibis. Night was fast approaching. I hadn't slept well for a few days, but the condition of my body wasn't bad because Aileen had repaired my stories. I have temporarily fixed it, but you need to be careful with outside activities. Don't you know? You are still outside the main scenario. You sound like a doctor. I can't speak like a clockmaker because I'm not dealing with clocks now. Aileen watched me before standing up with their repair equipment. Many things had happened in the past 2 days, but she didn't seem dissatisfied with the current situation. Kim Dokja thought, if I hadn't come, Aileen would have kept being a clockmaker. In many regressions when Yu Jonghyuk hadn't come to the demon world, Aileen would have actually survived. She quietly made clocks that told the time of her home planet and reflected alone on the disappearance of her planet. Sometimes she would struggle with Jang Haeung or go out to eat dishes made by Mark. Maybe it was a happier life for Aileen. Do you know? The number of people who had been looking for clocks has increased in the last few days. Aileen looked at me with an unknown gaze. I hesitated for a moment before asking, did their clocks break as a group? Originally, people of the industrial complex don't use clocks. Why? It is because there is no use in knowing something like time. I remembered something I read in Ways of Survival. Someone had referred to the demon world as the city that lost time. Then what about the hours of the night? Can they change their fate if they know when night comes? A fear that was too old became a law. It had happened for so many years that night in the industrial complex had become a natural thing. Once every 3 days, someone would die and their story would be used as fertilizer in the factory. No matter what life they lived, the stories they contained or the tomorrow they would live. Then the rest of the people would live for another 3 days. However, there was a night where no one died. It is because of you. People have started to fear the night again. It isn't a natural thing and can be resolved. They think perhaps they can live tomorrow. This is what they are thinking. My eyes suddenly fell to the watch around Eileen's wrist. There were 3 hours left until night arrived. I listened to the ticking second hand as Aileen remained silent. Perhaps some people in the industrial complex were watching clocks like we were now. Perhaps tonight would be harder and more intense than last night. Then why? I listened to the sound of the second hand moving and felt a bit comforted. I wasn't the one who should be comforted. Thank you. I'm not saying this to praise you. It just doesn't look good if the revolutionary is depressed. Aileen turned away. I laughed at Aileen and quickly added, wait a minute. What? Speaking of clocks, can you make something else? Something else? It is called a smartphone. What is that? Is it magic technology? I was wondering how to explain it and gave an overview of the feature of the smartphone. Then Aileen spoke like she knew. Do you mean something like a communication device? It shows a small panel? That's right. However, there isn't a Dakibi channel here, so communication isn't possible. Considering past experiences, it didn't matter if communication was possible. My phone synced automatically, so the text file would be created. Don't worry about it. Can you make it today? I'm afraid it will take at least 3 days. I will try my best. I know. Then do your best. I left Eileen's workshop and headed towards the pub. The people who found me on the streets stared with strange eyes. Some greeted me after making eye contact and others lightly gathered both hands together. As Aileen said, I could see something that looked like watches on their wrists. Yu Jonghyuk felt lonely as he saw these watches. They got their time back, but he still wasn't living in this time. Yu Jonghyuk suddenly thought. If so, where do I live in those countless hours? It was the monologue of Yu Jonghyuk, who once saved the demon world. It was also one of my favorite scenes from Ways of Survival. I suddenly seemed to understand a bit of his mind. To the regressor Yu Jong-hyuk, the time in these worlds didn't belong to him. In a life that could go back over and over again, the present time was meaningless. Once this was over, I would ask Aileen to make me a watch. If he had something like this, he might become more attached to this world. Maybe the regression depression would get better. I knew that this world wouldn't disappear when he went back in time, but without him, it would be difficult to clear the remaining scenarios. Ahahaha, this is really funny. I opened the pub door and saw the laughing Jang Haeung. From this distance, he looked like a junior high school student. What are you doing? This time, he didn't make the hike sound. Instead, Jang Haeung avoided my eyes like a child caught by his parents doing something bad. I was doing what you asked me to do. Did a fighter reply? That, Jang Haeung licked his lips for a while, before eventually confessing the truth. None of the fighters replied? Oh really? No one gave me a response. What did you say? I am a 15-year-old schoolgirl. My forehead vein bulged. Hey. They didn't reply because you sent that message. But it worked before. Do you think they are all like the Black Flame Dragon? How many messages did you send? A total of 300. Maybe they thought it was a spam message and blocked it. Damn. It's a big deal. I only know the fighters on that list. Jang Haeung realized that he was in trouble and paled. Then what now? This was why I needed Ways of Survival. If I had, the text file would have allowed me to reread things and search for more information about the fighters. Let's find out if there are any other fighters. For now, I was reminded of a few modifiers for the constellations. Was there someone among the constellations who could help us? Write a message to Prisoner of the Golden Headband. Isn't he a powerful constellation? I didn't know if he had any skills related to a fighter. However, now was the time to grab onto any piece of straw. Jang Haeung typed a message and we waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Jang Haeung shook his head. There is no reply. Write this. I dictated the contents of the message again. Then Jang Haeung was amazed. Can I use something like this? You just have to get his attention once. The great sage, the equal of heaven, was a lazy guy. It must be to this degree to get a reply. Less than 10 seconds after Jang Haeung sent this message, the following notification popped up. A reply has arrived. A reply is here. Is that right? For reference, the message I sent was as followed. Regrow your hair. Every time I did something, he would pull out his hair in the indirect message. Thus, I figured that he had hair loss. I asked, what did he say? If we meet, he will kill me. What else? He asked who I am. Should I say Yu Jong-hyuk? Don't answer. It would be fun to say Yu Jong-hyuk, but it would only make the matter bigger. I rubbed my temples. The great sage, the equal of heaven, ate the wrong bait, so we had to find another way. Demon-like judge of fire. I don't think it is good to call her. Secretive plotter. I still don't know his identity. It had become troublesome. Queen of the darkest spring and god of wine and ecstasy are from Olympus. If I revealed that I was alive, some of them would help. The problem was that if I clarified my identity, the nebulae would notice my survival. It is difficult. It was the first challenge I encountered after entering the demon world. There wasn't much time left until night arrived. If Jang Haeung didn't become a fighter, then all the plans I set up for tonight would be wasted. At this time, Jang Haeung wondered, can the Black Dragon help? I paused for a moment as I thought about the identity of the Black Dragon. You're still talking to him? Yes. Forget that guy. He probably has nothing. No, he was a fighter in the demon world for a while. The abyssal Black Flame Dragon was once a fighter? That story never came out in Ways of Survival. Come to think of it, details of the abyssal black flame dragon were never described in earnest, so it wasn't an impossible story. However, he didn't like the rules of the scenario and killed them all. What? The Duke, the revolutionary, and the executioners, he killed them all? Something suddenly came up. Perhaps it was when the 64th demon realm was integrated? There was one such madman in the history of the demon world. That person was the abyssal black flame dragon? Ask him if he can pass on the fighter's skills to you. The abyssal black flame dragon was a constellation of the evil system, and sending a message to him wouldn't be too obvious. It would be best if we could get help from him. Jang Heung entered something, and then he suddenly lit up. It isn't a problem to give it to me, since he isn't using it anyway. Really? It was an unexpected help. The problem could be solved in a way I hadn't thought of. In fact, neither the Black Dragon or Kim Namwon were good guys. I had to carefully read the parts where they appeared once I got the text file back. By the way, Jang Heung's words weren't over. However, he has one condition? That's right. That jerk couldn't give it away so easily. In any case, any transaction through the wall requires a payment. What is his condition? He has a problem recently. A problem? He isn't getting along very well with his incarnation. His incarnation? His incarnation keeps ignoring him. If it was the incarnation of the abyssal black flame dragon. She is in a crisis right now, but she isn't listening to his words. A crisis? I quickly ordered Jang Heung. Tell him to explain the story in detail. Chapter 208. Unidentified Wall. Part 5. There was the sound of a blade penetrating the heart and the last man fell. Cakewalk, D-Dog. He tried to squeeze out a curse, but the man's mouth was crushed by the woman's foot. He was the last man. Han Soo-young looked around the office that had become a bloodbath. I barely killed them all. At any rate, the adaptation of the Korean people is dirty and fast. This was the home of Law of the Jungle, an incarnation club of Gyeonggi Province. As soon as the scenario started, they chose a useful sponsor and turned themselves into a criminal group. They were those who refused the control of the government. If she didn't kill them now, they would become a cancer of the Korean peninsula. According to the original novel, they were bound to be such people. Damn Kim Dokja. She started cursing, but didn't feel any better. Thus, Han Soo-young added one more thing. Bastard Yoo Jong-hyuk. She thought of the two people who went their own separate ways, and Han Soo-young felt like an abandoned food processor. Damn it. Kim Dokja has a reason, but what's wrong with Yoo Jong-hyuk? The moment that Yoo Jong-hyuk left Seoul Dome, he continued to do things that weren't in the original third regression. He stayed alone in a room, talked to himself, and then threw the Korean peninsula scenarios away for the personal scenarios. Thanks to this, cleaning up the remnants were left entirely to Han Soo-young. What is he thinking? Shit. In any case, she was currently the last person who read Ways of Survival. Kim Dokja and Yoo Jong-hyuk weren't present, leaving her the only one responsible for the Korean peninsula. She sighed and quietly left the scene of slaughter. Ah, what a surprise. What are you doing here? There was a woman waiting for her at the office doorway. The woman wore a combat uniform that clung to her body, and her hair flowed around her in a cool manner. As if conscious of the body that was revealed, she wore a wide coat on her shoulders. It was a refreshing but very beautiful face. Well, this was what the media stated. Han Soo-young wondered, I thought you were busy with TV these days. Isn't this the case? Han Soo-young stared at Yoo Sang-ga with a slightly unfriendly look. Yoo Sang-ga moved away from the wall she was leaning on and looked down at Han Soo-young. There was a slight difference in their heights. There was a moment of confrontation before Yoo Sang-ga opened her mouth with a brief sigh. How long are you going to act this way? What? You can't kill all of them just because law and order is gone. Han Soo-young was too lazy to explain and just waved her hands. Yoo Sang-ga didn't know. What type of people belonged to Law of the Jungle? In addition, she didn't know what they would do. She didn't know, which was why she could argue with such childish justice. They are the ones who will do something wrong in the future. However, you didn't give them a chance. It has already been determined. You don't know anything. Han Suyang replied while passing by Yusenga. She couldn't share the future. The information that many people knew would become less valuable and would change the future. Kim Dokja would have probably done the same thing. So, 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. Han Suyang instantly stopped walking at Yusenga's words. Isn't that the book the prophets call the Revelation? You must have heard something funny. Did you read it? Han Suyang bit her lips before opening her mouth. You don't need to know. The constellations seemed to have no idea about this book. The story had slowly spread, so it wasn't strange. Some of the readers were outside Seoul Dome, and there were also the rumors that the prophets had leaked. Yusenga also knew that she was the first apostle. Did Kim Dokja read it? That's how he knows the information of the future. Who knows? It was an uncomfortable topic. Han Suyang pulled out a dagger. The information about ways of survival was filtered, but she didn't know how long it would continue. Thus, she had to reduce the number of mouths. Why did he do that? Han Suyang turned her head at the sudden sad tone. Why did Dokja SSI make such a choice even though he knows the future? Han Suyang looked at Yusenga's face and seemed to know why she came. Han Suyang stared quietly at Yusenga's face. She had been an ordinary office worker before the scenario started. She was in the same company as Kim Dokja. Why? Han Suyang suddenly felt hot. Everybody talks about Kim Dokja everywhere I go. They don't know anything about Kim Dokja. Han Suyang took short breaths as a terrible voice flowed out. Without knowing why she was so angry, Han Suyang cried out. He is a selfish bastard. He only thinks about himself from beginning to end. The person who fooled people to the end, lied and disappeared as a hypocrite. What do you know about him? You don't even know if he is dead or alive. A fleeting scene ran through her head. It was Kim Dokja's eyes looking at her in the tense scenario. It was that damn expression that made her pull out her knife first. No, he can't be dead. I'm sure he is alive and living well in another story. Do you really think so? You don't know Kim Dokja. There was a deep sense of self-deprecation in her cold tone. Nobody knew Kim Dokja, including Han Suyang herself. Yet Yusenga's answer was different. No, I know. What? A person doesn't change so suddenly. Yusenga's voice was calm. The scenario started, and for a while, Dokja SSI was like a different person. A man who could calm down in front of life-threatening situations and kill unknown beasts without hesitation. He was different from the Kim Dokja I knew. You probably didn't know Kim Dokja very well. Even so, Dokja SSI is still Dokja SSI. Han Suyang closed her mouth. A person who likes reading books rather than building up his specs. His presentation abilities aren't good, but he will listen to someone else's presentation. That Kim Dokja was different from the one Han Suyang knew. The person who knew Kim Dokja was talking. Thus, he was obviously lonely. Somewhere in front of her, Kim Dokja seemed to be making a face. In a world with no one. Kim Dokja might be looking at the sky alone in a world that no one knew. Han Suyang SSI. I have to go and rescue Dokja SSI. Han Suyang saw her determination and felt somehow defeated. You are a lucky person, Kim Dokja. People are worrying about you. Han Suyang was about to open her mouth when a message was heard in the air. A new main scenario has started. Son of a bitch. The Great Hall was opening in the air. The cries of monsters were heard from somewhere. The surprised Yusenga and Han Suyang stood back to back. A giant monster was swooping down through the Great Hall. Then the Dakibi's voice was heard. The wave pattern is obvious and very slow, but I put it in because people seem to be too free these days. Yusenga frowned at the sudden emergence of a situation and frowned. Was this the original content? I don't know. I don't remember everything. This was why she didn't want to do it alone. She knew the future, but the information she knew was about flimsy things. Kim Dokja knew many rounds, and Yu Jonghyuk, who made it through the rounds, might be able to make a breakthrough, but not Han Soo-young. The giant serpent flew through the dark clouds and landed on the ground. Every time the long tail swept over the ground, the high-rise buildings collapsed. This was a third-grade strange dragon species, the Kragagon. It was the name of the monster who descended as a disaster in the 12th scenario. How do we beat that? Han Soo-young tried hard to recall the contents of the original novel, but no matter how she thought about it, a strategy didn't pop up. Then the only way left was a full-scale battle. Fortunately, there was Yu Sanga right next to her. They weren't colleagues, but it was better than nothing. The Stigma Black Flames LV6 has been activated. She focused her magic power on her dagger while activating the skills of the weapon. The third-grade strange dragon species, Kragagon, has defended against the attack using fire resistance. The third-grade strange dragon species, Kragagon, has defended against the attack using shadow resistance. Ah, you are no help against a damn lizard. The enemy had fire and dark resistance, so Han Soo-young's skills didn't affect it at all. The attacks just seemed to tickle and annoy the strange dragon. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is gloomy. She looked around and Yu Sanga's situation didn't seem much better. Han Soo-young thought to herself, if only she had inherited the story of the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. Damn it, how do I inherit that damn story? Han Soo-young's expression darkened as she looked at the group of incoming strange dragons. If that jerk, Kim Dokja, was here, he could have told her what to do. It was at this moment. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon tell you that if you want, he can you tell their weakness. You know their weakness? The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is nodding. Don't make a fool of yourself. You don't know much about the scenarios. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is jumping around wildly. Han Soo-young listened to the Black Dragon's childish message and inwardly sighed. That brat Kim Dokja, he must have laughed at me when I chose the Black Dragon? The Abyssal Black Flame Dragon was clearly a powerful constellation. However, his intelligence was much lower compared to other constellations. Why? This guy was too strong since his birth and didn't need much strategy to attack the scenarios. It was cool to hear, but it wasn't good from the position of his incarnation. However, this time something was different. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon says that the Kragagon's weakness is the silver scale on top of its head. Really? Last time you told me the wrong thing. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon claims on his Black Flame Dragon that this is real. You said that last time as well. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon claims this story was told by a reliable source. Reliable source? Since there was no other method, Han Soo-young decided to follow the words of the Black Flame Dragon. Han Soo-young jumped onto the strange dragon's tail and used footwork to run up. She crossed the streamlined body. She really saw a silver scale near the crown of his head. Hop! The dagger dug into the scale and the Kragagon collapsed with a terrible scream. The breath of the giant monster stopped in an instant. Han Soo-young was stunned and muttered, "Really? Aren't you quite useful?" The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is puffing up his chest with a triumphant expression. Yu Sanga flew through the air and said, "Do you know its weakness?" "No, not me. In any case, the silver scale is its weakness. That's all you have to attack." Thanks to the information given by the Black Dragon, the two of them safely suppressed the Kragagons. The constellation Bald General of Justice admires your performance. Han Soo-young received the messages of the constellations and slightly frowned. Usually it would be a pleasant situation, but today something was wrong. She always felt like this when she was teased by Kim Dokja. At this moment, something ran through her head. Hey, Black Flame Dragon. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is surprised and looks at his incarnation. Tell me honestly. Who did you hear this from? The third night has arrived. I listened to the message and recalled what happened a while ago. He really did as I told him. Just like Kim Namwon, perhaps the abyssal black flame dragon wasn't as bad as I knew. Either way, he was Han Soo-young's sponsor. Thus, it was okay to tell him this. I am safe, don't worry. Tell this to the person who asked. Revolutionary. I had to endure this. Endure it now so I could smile and meet them again. I quietly moved through the night. Quack. Screams came from everyone. It wound the sound that signaled the executioner's appearing. It was bloody from the beginning. Maybe it would be a terrible night that couldn't be compared to the other 2 days. I killed 3 executioner, so tonight they would come full force. Nevertheless, I wasn't afraid. Starting from tonight, I would start the counterattack. Jang Haeung. Jang Haeung walked forward at my words. He was very tense, but it wasn't the same expression as before. Jang Haeung asked, "Can I do well?" "No one can do it better than you." "Do you really think so?" "I only learnt the skill 2 hours ago." 2 hours is enough. I spoke with confidence. It wasn't just to reassure Jang Haeung. Who is the most perfect incarnation? One day, the flippant commentators of the Star Stream discussed this topic. The strongest incarnation in a one-on-one fight is definitely Yoo Jong-hyuk. There is no one who can fight as well as him. No one can beat Anna Croft when it comes to information. How about Lee Hyun-sung? He is the best tanker. It is Ranveer Khan in Major Wars. Jang Haeung's name wasn't mentioned at all. He was inferior to Yoo Jong-hyuk in a one-on-one fight. He had less information than Anna Croft. His defense wasn't better than Lee Hyun-sung. He wasn't as effective as Ranveer Khan in a major war. However, the most perfect incarnation is someone who must do well in everything. Then it has been decided. He had more defense than Yoo Jong-hyuk. He was better in a one-on-one fight than Anna Croft. He was better in a large war than Lee Hyun-sung. He was an outstanding presence, was more information than Ranveer Khan. The character, Jang Haeung, has used fighter transformation LV9. Jang Haeung is the most perfect incarnation. Jang Haeung's body moved in a burning curve and painted the sky red. He wasn't exceptional in one area, but he had the most attributes and skills of everyone in ways of survival. The moment he acquired a skill, he had the ability to reach the highest level of the skill sooner than anyone else. The master of the unidentified wall, the king of transcendence Jang Haeung. The second part of Ways of Survival began with this guy. Chapter 209. Unidentified Wall. Part 6. The character, Jang Haeung, has awakened as a fighter. Just as a guardian had the skill guard, a fighter had the skill fighter transformation. It was a skill that melted all of their fears and turned it into force. Thanks to this skill, a person who had been exploited for a long time could gain a more powerful force. In that sense, Jang Haeung was a good candidate to be a fighter even without the unidentified wall. Hayop. The problem was that he was too excited. A sky-shattering sound was heard. The fighter was a position capable of exerting as much power as possible against an executioner. Perhaps Jang Haeung was currently feeling like a constellation. Don't mess around, you idiot. I belatedly raised my voice, but Jang Haeung had already gone out of my reach. This was the problem with Jang Haeung. In fact, I wasn't afraid of Jang Haeung's talent. I was afraid of him running wild as a result of his talent. Kim Dokja thought, Jang Haeung isn't without talent. Rather, he has too much talent. The only all-rounder in Ways of Survival, Jang Haeung. Jang Haeung's unidentified wall guaranteed a formidable growth only through skills obtained from the wall's transactions. Of course, it was impossible to reach the grounds of transcendence, but Jang Haeung could raise his skill level faster than anyone else. It was a talent that could go beyond other people's training in just a few hours. Such talent would inevitably make the owner of the talent dangerous. WH at RYOU. I barely managed to catch up with Jang Haeung where he was already engaged with an executioner. The sparks of a fighter wrapped around Zhang Heiyang and protected him from the executioner's scythe. The mark isn't available for this position. Perhaps the executioner would be receiving such a message now. Ths, are you perhaps? However, enlightenment was too late. Zhang Heiyang overcame the executioner's scythe and grabbed its neck with a skillful move. Okay. It wasn't possible for a fighter to show this much combat power. At most, they were usually one level of power beyond the executioner. Now Zhang Heiyang was completely overwhelming the executioner. It was only possible because it was Zhang Heiyang. The caught executioner struggled like a ferocious rat, but it couldn't endure Zhang Heiyang's slowly tightening grip. There was the sound of bones breaking and the executioner's body dangled down. Then the hem of the executioner's clothes started scattering. It was an absurd end for the existences who had dominated the industrial complex's night for decades. An executioner has been killed by a fighter. Current number of executioners remaining, 6. The citizens injured by the executioners were looking this way. Zhang Heiyang's fire lit up the night. It was like a glowing sun. However, Zhang Heiyang wasn't the sun and it was currently night. An executioner has died. An executioner has died. No way. It is currently night. A fighter has appeared. After the end of the executioner, the people hiding in the houses stretched out their heads. They were people who had been living for a long time in the shadow of the night. The citizens are influenced by the heat of the revolution. They were coming out of their houses, one by one. They stared at Zhang Heiyang like he was the leader. The character, Zhang Heiyang, has stiffened because of fighter transformation. This jerk thought he was a revolutionary. I lightly slapped Zhang Heiyang's back. Zhang Heiyang's red-tinged eyes slowly recovered. Zhang Heiyang was belatedly aware of the pain and glared at me as he held the back of his head. That hurts. Why did you hit me so hard? Steady your mind. You will be in trouble if you act like an idiot. It should be the crowd that is heated up. If the person who leads is swept away by the heat, the revolution won't be able to tolerate the fire and will go out before it burns properly. These were Yu Zhonghyuk's words in the 111th regression. It was a shameful line for me to spit out, so I kept it to myself. Zhang Heiyang looked at me disapprovingly and pouted. It hurts more than the executioner. Then I hit you properly. Zhang Heiyang's current strength was limited to the scenario, and it was only when dealing with the executioners. It was dangerous to be taken in by such power. Aileen shouted in the distance. There are 2 in the west. 1 to the south. The rest are in the north. It was clear what these numbers meant. Let's move. Zhang Heiyang nodded and we ran through the night. I looked at Zhang Heiyang, who was going ahead again, and heard a message in my mind. The 4th wall is looking at Zhang Heiyang with a desire to eat. No way. Don't even think about it. Just like against Nirvana and the Outer God, the 4th wall coveted Zhang Heiyang's story. It probably wasn't just Zhang Heiyang, but the unidentified wall as well. The 4th wall is sorry. I thought you wanted to make friends with that wall. You shouldn't eat your friend. Kim Dokja, who wanted to be friends with the 4th wall, said. It was a real brat. Wayawa. There were screams from the rushing crowd. A fighter has appeared. Hang in there. They screamed while wielding weapons towards the executioners. The fires of magic power popped up in various places around the industrial complex. People were fighting back. They were fighting against opponents they couldn't face. I could believe it if one of them was a revolutionary. An executioner has been killed by a fighter. Current number of executioners remaining, 5. Zhang Heiyang knocked down another executioner. Now there were only 5 remaining. Once all the executioners died, the dupe would no longer be able to hide. From then on, the real revolution would start. Kill everybody. Wah. As the citizens gained courage, the executioners gradually slowed down. No one apart from the fighter could harm an executioner during the night. Nevertheless, the important thing was atmosphere. Foolish. An executioner who swung its scythe was attacked by Jang Haeung. 2 executioners had already died, so this one didn't face Jang Haeung head-on. The executioner fled like it was frightened. The citizens watched the executioner running away and shouted, "They're going away." Jang Haeung stepped on the low roofs of the industrial complex and chased after the executioner. Everything was flowing smoothly. At this rate, the night would pass safely. The Duke would be forced to recall the night in order to reduce the damage to the executioners. Even so, Kim Dokja was vigilant to the end. There were countless revolutionaries who died in the history of the demon world. Until the night was gone, the revolutionary should be vigilant until the end. Even if I was a fake revolutionary. Kim Dokja thought, the spy Han Myungo was caught by me and 3 executioners died during the day. The balance of power was collapsing and the atmosphere of the industrial complex was rapidly changing. Under these circumstances, the Duke couldn't send the night again without a plan. At least, not the Duke Siswitz I knew. Sure enough. I felt something flying towards my neck and reflexively leaned back. 4 scythes passed over my head and hit the roofs. My head would be gone if I had been 1 second slower. They had been hiding. Apart from the executioner that Jang Haeung was chasing, the 4 other executioners all aimed for me. It couldn't compare to the first day. I used Bookmark to trigger Way of the Wind, but it wasn't enough to avoid all the flying attacks. The Guardian. Someone is using their vitality to protect you. The hiding Mark used guard on me. Now Mark had 2 points remaining. The executioners didn't leave, despite the effect of guard being applied to me. The stupid Kim Dokja started thinking. It felt like they were dragging out the time. I noticed the Duke's plan. The Duke knew a fighter would appear. Jang Haeung was in danger. I condensed the wind using Way of the Wind and made a powerful explosion behind me. I shot forward like a comet and the perplexed executioners shouted after me. St. Op. I borrowed the power of guard and wave to break through the wall of executioners. Jang Haeung had gone chasing after 1 executioner. Presumably, there would also be a Ok. There was a sharp scream and I saw Jang Haeung flying back while bleeding. Damn it, this was why I hit him. I controlled the wind and caught the falling body. Hey, are you okay? Hyuk, Kyok. He was coughing up blood. It wasn't a fatal injury, but it would be hard for him to continue fighting. I wanted to know who made the Knight's fighter like this, but then I saw an oversized executioner walking towards this side. Revolutionary? It was impossible. An executioner could never win against a fighter at night. Yet this one. The collar of the executioner slowly scattered and the face of a demon was exposed. Now I realized what happened. Jang Haeung wasn't hit with the power of an executioner. The power of this story was incomparable to the Demon Baron and Earl I first saw when I came here. I watched him carefully and asked, "You used your head and used a technique other than execution. You aren't a duke, so you must be a marquis. Am I correct?" I asked first. "Are you the revolutionary?" "That's right. I am the revolutionary." A cheeky voice. The demon's thick eyebrows wriggled and he spoke in a somewhat languid voice. "I am Marquis Ostion. Demon Marquis Ostion." Along with Duke Siswitz, he was one of the 2 marquises leading this industrial complex. I think there is one more. You have keen eyes. A Hmong demon emerged from the darkness. This one didn't seem to have the power of an executioner. You are also a marquis? It wasn't the demon who answered the question. "Am Marquis Quartetto." Marquis Quartetto stood under the moonlight as the citizens screamed. Ostion and Quartetto. The 2 marquises leading the Siswitz industrial complex appeared at the same time, causing the citizens to be completely frightened. Duke Siswitz liked things to be certain. He didn't know the identity of the enemy, so he sent out both marquises. You created such a nuisance during this precious time. You are a big guy. Their expressions showed it was annoying to take care of a nuisance. It was understandable, since they had been in control of the industrial complex for hundreds of years. After already deciding I was dead, the two marquises stared at the other citizens. The surrounding pressure soared and the citizens were forced to kneel. The incarnations trembled and held their breaths. The marquises spoke towards them. This is the price you will receive. The story ruler's command is activated. The edge of the language created by the marquises threatened the citizens. Nothing had happened yet, but the words themselves started to dominate the imagination of the citizens. You will lose everything valuable. They imagined losing their precious families. You will lose the peaceful nights. They were deprived of all the nights of peace. You will pay the price for disturbing this industrial complex. They paid a price that they could never afford. This is the meaning of revolution. The sentences fell like a final verdict. The citizens were mired in them and stared up at the marquises with frightened eyes. The marquises laughed like this situation was satisfactory. Look. Your hopes are crumbling. They decided to use this as an opportunity to consolidate the ruling system. Baihyung should see this nonsense. The two marquises turned towards me while directing their status towards me. Ordinary citizens would be terrified right now. However, while all citizens were kneeling on the ground, I alone stood upright. The perplexed marquises stared at me and shouted again, "Look! Look at how he collapses!" The marquises attempted to use their status to pressure me several times. The veins bulged as if they were exerting all their might to reveal their presence. Collapsing. Collapse. No, this. I slowly approached them. Kim Dokja thought. Only a fighter could deal with an executioner at night. The enemies decided to utilize their force instead of using the positions of the scenario. Thus, it was necessary to respond to them. It can't be avoided this time. If I opened this power, my incarnation body would shake a lot. However, it was inevitable to deal with a marquis. I needed to use the minimum of strength. I had to get rid of them with optimal efficiency. You. I knew what they wanted to ask and preempted them. Who am I? A marquis-grade noble was strong. Still, no matter how strong they were, it was just a measurement of the incarnations. They were those who didn't even match the great grade constellations. I slowly closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I felt somewhat uncomfortable. I had never done this since becoming a constellation. The constellation status is released. The status, which couldn't be compared to the previous one, crushed the time and space in the area.